Hi, LexSeeHer is excited to be back here tonight at the Monuments and Memorials meeting with our Something is Being Done proposal for a new monument that will recognize women's contributions across time on the Visitor Center lawn here in the birthplace of American liberty. In other meetings, we've gone over nuts and bolts, materials, size, accessibility, the design concept in great detail. We've talked about tourism and how it's going to welcome visitors and residents, talked about Ms. Bergmann's other work and her exceptional references, and she herself shared with you more about her design process and how things go from sketch to finished work, including in bas relief. Tonight is about why are so many individuals, families, local businesses, civic and cultural organizations uniting around this project and around Site 15? Who are these supporters and what's making them excited about this change in our common public space? We're going to give you some quick updates on the budget and the axial rotation of the monument, and we'll talk about why this location is so special and important for all of us. We'll also go through the counter arguments that we've heard, and we'll tell you how the community and LexSeeHer responds. And then the question is, who decides what happens next? You play a really important role, and we are hoping to earn your support for our design concept at Site 15 on the Visitor Center lawn and a positive recommendation to the Select Board. As you know, we began as a small group and we have grown steadily with more than 450 original contributing founders. Many have been with us for more than 2 years now, and many hundreds more since then. And we're so proud tonight to share 15 community, civic, cultural organizations that firmly support our proposal, both the design and the location at Site 15, from the local chapter of the DAR to ABCL, CalLex, IAL, COLEX, Lex Pride, Lex Dinas, Miriam Hill Association, Lex Art, Pilgrim Congregational Church, New England Sculptors Association. We were asked, is this going to divide our community, bringing forward a monument to recognize women? And as you can see, actually, it's unified people who don't ordinarily have the opportunity to work together. They are saying yes to something positive that will enhance our community. In addition, we've had this ongoing, very open process as Lexington requires and benefits from, because we've gone to multiple committees with the same concept and proposal. And we've had input and feedback, including from members here. And here's the support we have lined up around Site 15. The Commission on Disability, the Center Committee, the Design Advisory Committee are unanimously in support of this location. In addition, the Historic Districts Commission voted 6-2 to grant a certificate of appropriateness based on Site 15 on the Visitor Center lawn. That is a lot of consensus building right there. The Tourism Committee last week, the group expressed verbal unanimous support for the monument, but the motion was specifically to have the monument someplace else, and 4 people voted for that. 2 members preferred Site 15. So they were divided, but their formal position opposes our proposal. Council for the Arts voted unanimous support for the monument, with a majority supporting specifically Site 15 again. So we want some quick updates, and the budget has shifted a small amount since we were with you last. We've been learning more about lighting. We had $5,000 allocated. Now with a very early preliminary exploration of lighting, we are increasing that to $12,000. That allows $7,000 for lighting. Ms. Bergmann can answer any questions. It is an entire world unto itself, with a real difference in how you light an object of art and how you might light an industrial object. So I'd let her speak to that if you have questions. Our Plaza Patron campaign is opened, and so we are actually very glad to say that we have this much money in the bank. We've got $261,577.48, and that keeps us above that 90% threshold that we agreed on with you at a prior meeting. Other update is axial rotation. This means that the Historic Districts Commission, when granting the certificate of appropriateness for this site on the Visitor Center lawn, some members asked for something more, quote, poetic. And that is not an objective term, so we weren't quite sure what that meant. We met on site with our liaison, and now we understand what it meant was by rotating the monument, same place on the earth, but rotating it. Now when someone's standing looking at all these women, the backdrop would be these trees in the background and this nice, more historic looking, timeless vista. if you're standing on the opposite side, rather than looking at the Clark Street intersection, you now will have the distant view of Cary Library, which is another way to tie, of course, to women's contributions with the donors there at the library. So what this means also in terms of the poetry of place is that here are some women. Both sides have women holding books. They would, when you look at them, you'd see the library behind them, lovely. And up here is Ruth Buckman. So if you were standing here on the ground and looking, Ruth Buckman's about here. I'm looking on the left here with my cursor, and it would face off this way over to Buckman Tavern. Now, we got there with the suggestion of exploring a north-south alignment. This turned out to be very lovely because I'll go back to that last slide. It is now parallel with the main part of Buckman Tavern. So probably when they built that building, they too were looking for that passive solar north-south alignment. From the visitor center, you will see green grass all the way around now, which we think is an enhancement, giving that green, grassy, open feeling. There are two small paths rather than one at this juncture because it was thought that coming in and being able to look at that, again, that center entrance, which is really important part of the design. This is what makes it the most inclusive possible because every single person can come and see themselves among these historic, inspiring women that we have honored in the sweep of history, as Ms. Bergmann puts it. Now, people are excited about this change in our common public space, as you've seen from so many groups aligning in support. We've asked why, we've listened, lots of events. Here's what they say. We preserve the past, we study the past, we reenact the past, and we are proud that people come from across the planet to Lexington to learn about history and the origins of democracy. Here are some girls who were visited. You can see they're dressed up, and girls and women celebrate and identify with history as well. Now, they're probably not going to dress up as Minutemen because, of course, women were not Minutemen. When they go walk around our historic area, whether they grow up here or visit here, there are very few indications that women lived here at any point in time. One very meaningful clue is at the home of the person who, at the corner of Harrington Road and Bedford Street. It was the house of Jonathan Harrington, who was wounded on the Common and who died. And if you've been, as many of us have, to Patriots Day and the reenactment, it is an incredibly moving, transformative experience because it's no longer a random few words on a page in your history book when you're growing up. Instead, you're seeing the humanity, the pain, the suffering that are part of our community's history. What was the town common, where the meeting house was and everyone gathered for life, major life events across from the tavern, became suddenly a horrific place of violence, death, loss. The sign reminds us of this as we pass it, but we do note that it is seen as the house of Jonathan Harrington, and it recognizes he was married, he has a wife. There's no mention of her name. And what we were doing here is saying that when people come to Lexington, they do look to learn about our history, but they're interested in learning about the women who lived here too, the untold stories. Historic education and historic preservation work is never complete. The Prince Estabrook Monument was the first to recognize Black Lexingtonians in any way, and it's very important to us as a community, but there are more stories to tell about Black Lexingtonians. Some projects, as we see on the side, are in process, and we have incredibly hardworking staff. We've got to recover after every winter, and volunteers who keep working on that. Adding new monuments has never taken away from the monuments that are already here. And they remind us there's more than one way to tell a story. So the Bashka Payef monument brought people together at that time to bring a new monument. And as you can see, her emphasis was on showing the humanity of the men who served. So they wouldn't be names on a page. We would see that these were real men who served and the kind of position they were in. It's extremely evocative. One monument can't tell our whole history, and women's stories are waiting to be told. Newer monuments in this area tell about men's contributions across time, not just at the battle. People come from far and wide to see the USS Lexington Memorial, and we know it's not just about the ships. It's about the men who actually served and who were on those ships. Of course, men were the only ones allowed to serve for decades and centuries, and many women are now proud part of the military, but they were excluded traditionally. This is a place where we do not only look at veterans or people who are in the military service, closer to the sacred battle green. There's a monument that tells us more about the meeting house that was located there. There's one about the belfry as well. At the meeting house one, we see, again, men's contributions across time from 1692 to 1846. It is not limited to veterans. It is not limited to the time of the battle. And this is right up next to the battle green. People are so excited about the women's monument because it's going to tell us about women who were at the same historic time, even earlier, and their contributions. And like the ships and like the one with the clergymen, it's also going to tell us about women across time. Women also, of course, couldn't be clergy for many centuries. So Ms. Bergmann's design puts women back to back, and it's this sense of longing, curiosity. People who want to do research finally feel some sense of fulfillment when they will see this monument. That's why they're so excited. We can learn about the tea burning. We can learn about Margaret Tulip. People have so enjoyed, celebrated, been moved by learning about Margaret Tulip's story. It certainly helped us understand the history of slavery in Lexington. And she stands back to back with Anna Harrington. Ms. Bergmann, of course, ties the spinning wheel, which connects to Captain Parker, the wheelwright, to the design right here by Anna Harrington and the plaza. We were so curious and excited by this story. None of us knew it in our group about the spinning protest. So here's a computer graphic made last year. What did it look like when 45 women took their spinning wheels out right there at Anna Harrington's home? And then people were so excited, we did a tableau and we reenacted that moment. This is something we'll do again this year and for years to come. People are excited about learning about history, and they're excited about learning what women did and how they contributed. So each of these women has a little oval. Over here is Anna Harrington, oval 5 on the right here, and then it corresponds to a map. Up here is oval 5 representing Anna Harrington and her home. And each of these ovals refers to a different woman in the design. This sense of place is very important. Here, this yellow dot shows you where we are recommending asking permission to put the monument. It's a very small amount of space in this very large historic area, but these women lived here, protested here, worked here, were enslaved here, or were slaves here. They studied here, raised children here, went to church here. Many died and were buried here. And we will use the term slave and enslaved person as our community works on finding terminology that is as respectful as possible to everyone. And we appreciate that coming up at the last meeting here at Monuments and Memorials with Charlie Price. The Visitor Center lawn is not the same as the Battle Green. It is accessible. It's where tourists meet the Liberty Ride, near the bike path, within sight of the Minuteman, the Battle Green, and also, of course, the site of the spinning protest. This is where people come to learn about history. We've talked before about the amount of square feet, 615 square feet. Plenty of space is available for this monument in this area. It does not touch the Battle Green. Some concerns we've heard fall into 3 basic categories, these counter arguments to our proposal, and we'll give you a quick answers. One person said women had nothing to do with the battle. One said Margaret Tulip had nothing to do with Lexington as she wasn't from Lexington. Margaret Tulip lived here for 75 years, and slaves and enslaved people did not have a choice about where they were sold or brought. And she certainly is a Lexingtonian, and we are very proud of her and her contribution. Certainly, we want to celebrate her and have more people think about her experience and her pursuit of her freedom in court. It ties to this question of what exactly liberty is and how that has changed over time. Women definitely did have to do with the battle. We've talked about Abigail Harrington before. We won't review all of that. Historians, including Mary Fuhrer, have talked about the role women played in Lexington in the days, years, months leading up to the battle, during the battle, and certainly in the aftermath throughout the Revolution. Phoebe Bannister Perdue, her son served with Captain Parker's company. Ruth Buckman, it was her grandfather's tavern that her husband owned because, of course, women were not allowed to own property. That's an important thing for people to learn about when they think about history and how far we've come or not. There are more contemporary women, just as the ships or the pastor's monument refer to women, to men across time. This does include women across time. We can certainly all be very proud that Cecilia Payne-Gaposchkin is one of the most celebrated astrophysicists, and it's incredible what she's done to help us see the universe. Mary Elizabeth Miles Bibb Carey, also, she's from the 1800s, abolitionist, journalist, educator, brings our attention to the normal school right here in this area. And we are certainly proud of public education and high quality public education here in Lexington. Another counter argument set is not here. People who say they would, sure, they like the monument, but just not here, somewhere else. At the tourism committee meeting, someone specifically said they thought it should be someplace less significant. So we disagree with that. LexSeeHer's first and most important priority is addressing the very major absence of women within the heart of the historic Battle Green area and on the visitor center lawn. So we have not asked to be in the Battle Green, but the visitor center lawn is not sacred in itself, and our monument actually increases people's understanding of how very sacred the Battle Green is by thinking about the loss of these men who died and the relationship they had with women, the gaps they left in their families. We think it's great to make women visible across town, but this is not the only monument that can ever happen. So people could bring forward other proposals that are better suited to other areas. In addition, the town manager designee told us in February 2021 that Emery Park could not be considered. We have not gone forward with that, and we have reached an enormous amount of consensus by talking about the same site, Site 15, for a very long time across all of these public committees. Finally, there's it doesn't work with the Battle Green master plan arguments. One person said that we're in the middle of the Battle Green. We're not, that it blocks the view of Captain Parker. It doesn't, and that it violates the Battle Green master plan. We are in alignment with the Battle Green master plan. In fact, these are the focal points, star, star, star. These are the arrows that show you important vistas that need to be preserved. We have definitely done that. And also page 84 makes recommendations, lists action items that include consider enhancements which might create new views or establish new focal points. We've talked about several things already tonight that can help enhance this area. This mini match of 1769 is compelling, accurate, true, and celebrates women's contributions. The plan was written as a blueprint for guiding changes in a specific scope of areas like signage. Over the next 5 to 10 years, that time has elapsed, but the plan was never intended to freeze the area or to exclude new monuments, and it was definitely not intended to exclude women. The plan talks about different areas within the larger Battle Green master plan area, like the green, and it explains why different areas have different adaptability for change. We looked at lots of places here, and it was input from the community and from appointed and elected committees and commissions that helped us narrow to Site 15. Here's the Battle Green. Our proposal is not anywhere on the green. It is across and down the street. Here's our site plan. Down over here, this is the Minuteman on the bottom left, and off to the left is the Battle Green. So let's look at that argument about visibility. This gray box is here just to enhance where the visitor center is, so you can see it. We drew lines from corner to corner of the visitor center over towards the Minuteman. Here's the Minuteman. Here's the edge of the sidewalk. And then just here's a simple highlight. You can see there's a wide vista there. The monument is off to the side here. And just to further drive that home, you can see that there's a lot of space between these sight lines over to Captain Parker, and it's even further away from the Battle Green. There are trees there, which is not our personal or organizational concern, but when you're walking in person, it certainly appears that to the naked eye, when a person walks from Captain Parker to the visitor center, there is a tree in that vista space, and our monument is over here on the side. One change from November is that the plaza is a little bit bigger. The monument is actually a little bit shorter than this, but you can see it's small and relatively off to the distance from Captain Parker and not interfering with the vista. From the other view, again, this is in the winter. If you're at the visitor center, standing by the entrance, and you look off to Captain Parker, there's a newly planted tree, and then off to the right is the Battle Green. So our monument is not interrupting that at all. The plan excludes women, or a plan for women, or how to recognize women, or to become more inclusive. It doesn't discuss women, it ignores the women who are here, and it simply is as if women didn't exist. Since 2011, though, our community has been much more verbal, open, acknowledging all kinds of disparities, racial disparities, gender disparities, and we've talked about being more inclusive. In March 2019, town meeting voted to no longer use the term selectmen, but to say select board to be more inclusive. We've hired a diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. The schools teach about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Town meeting voted a non-binding resolution, but it asks all of us who are involved with local government to take inclusivity account in making decisions. This includes making decisions about our public spaces and about who we recognize in our monuments. We reached out to Lucinda Brockway, who was the consultant hired to author the Battle Green Master Plan. She defines here the goals that the plan had, defining the area, unifying design standards for paving, signage, lighting, plantings, and wayfinding, providing guidelines for long-term stewardship. Now, not all of the recommendations here were taken up. The select board did not create a separate advisory committee as she recommended or the plan recommended, but even so, she spent a lot of time on this plan. We wrote to her, she looked at pictures, the same kind that you have seen all along of our proposed site, and she formed an opinion. Ms. McKenna did contact her after the tourism meeting, and then Ms. Brockway wrote back, and then we wrote back, and then she wrote back. But the bottom line is she said she stands by her opinion, and it's only one opinion, but it is her opinion. She says the siting of the Women's Monument is another example of Lexington's impassioned relationship to history and to the many lenses that can be shed on the cultural meaning of history. She goes on, its siting does not interfere with the key views and vistas to and from the Battle Green, nor does it interfere with the sacred core of the Battle Green used for April reenactments and visited by thousands of tourists each year. It reinforces the imbued values of the Battle Green as a sacred and spiritual space, reflecting the cultural values across generations that have shaped a nation and a community. This monument, if accepted and installed, is another example of these rights and the deeply embedded significance of the Battle Green itself. Instead of interfering with its national significance, it furthers that dialogue into our 21st multicultural century. We agree, and this is not to say that any individual of any committee makes the decision. Ultimately, the select board will make the decision, but you play an important role because you understand what our monuments in Lexington have been about in the past. You understand how important it is for every part of our community across time to have their opportunity to express who and what they value. And what we're showing you is that our community is saying through us to you, the monument helps address a thirst for works that tell the untold stories about women's roles in America and democracy. It celebrates Lexington's diversity, from racial and ethnic diversity to diversity along age and other lenses of identity. We have suffragists, we have abolitionists, we have people who have worked to make our community better and to promote the very ideals of liberty and justice and freedom and equality that Lexington has been known for. The tourism committee's new logo will be to make history in Lexington, and certainly people can continue to make history. We can make her story or show that her story is part of history as well. And again, we're speaking on behalf of ourselves and a broad coalition of community organizations who give their time and attention to making Lexington the very best we can be. And that will be enhanced with a new monument at Site 15 on the Visitor Center lawn. And we urge your support and we welcome your questions. Thank you.